Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gilda Evans, bringing you the Autism Resource Podcast. This podcast and the ARP website are your one-stop knowledge and resource base for autism and much more. I'm very pleased to have Dr. Steve Winshel join me as my guest today. Steve holds a PhD in experimental cognitive psychology, but has spent his career as a serial startup founder and coach, mentor, and teacher to many communities. He helps entrepreneurs start their own businesses and coaches people who are at inflection points in their lives, career and personal. He works specifically with special needs clients to help them develop executive functions, move forward to successful careers, or start their own businesses. Welcome, Steve, and thank you so much for taking time to join me and discuss the work that you do today.
Gilda, thanks very much. It's very kind of you to allow me to be here. And I have to say, I'm impressed with how you pronounce my name correctly. There are multiple variations, and you did the one that I prefer. So thank you.
Oh, I am a stickler for names, so I am glad that I hit it spot on. That makes me feel good.
Absolutely.
To get started, tell me, what is unique about your background that supports you bringing value to the neurodiverse community?
That's a little bit of a softball question. I was expecting something that was going to knock me over because I like that question because I do think that I have a little bit of an unusual background. And as a result of that unusual background, I tend to focus on very particular sets of needs and goals that people are trying to achieve. So I think that the background that's a little bit unusual is an academic background. As you mentioned, I've got a doctorate in what would today be called cognitive science, the fancier term for it, but really trying to understand brain function. And then decades, and I shouldn't confess to how many decades because I'm old, but many decades of working with people, both as individuals in their lives, but also as business people. So I've started a lot of companies. I continue to start companies. I continue to teach people how to start companies. I teach entrepreneurship at Columbia Business School and Cornell Tech. So I interact with a lot of people at different stages in their lives who are at these interesting inflection points, oftentimes related to career. But since career is often related to life, it quickly shifts into issues that are happening in their lives, other areas where they want to develop. So I combine the sort of academic side, extensive experience on the business side, and then literally tens of thousands of coaching hours in many different scenarios where I've seen everything and worked through with people many different issues. And I will add one last thing, which is throughout my career for really a long time, just naturally throughout the population of people I meet, I've had neurodiverse clientele in the past, but only about a year ago, when I had the opportunity to get involved with a SDP, that I found myself having the opportunity to work more and more with folks who are on the autism spectrum. And I can tell you right now that I don't want to say I'm biased, but I would say that more than half of my clientele is neurodiverse. And it's been fascinating for me. I think it's been helpful to them as well.
Well, that's interesting. And you said SDP, so just for the purposes of our listeners who may not know what that is, self-determination program that is specific to the community here in California, the regional centers that service the disabled community, neurodivergent community here in California. And I believe in other states, it's referred to as self-direction.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. I'm so used to throwing out acronyms. I sometimes do that when I'm standing in front of a classroom of 100 people. But yes, so within California, this is a very structured environment, as you said, called self-determination, and there are budgets associated, et cetera. And I would say maybe a quarter of the people I work with are through that program. Others are in other programs or not in an affiliated program. So I don't restrict myself, of course, to that, which is why I'd mentioned to you in a previous conversation that I travel an enormous amount, what I refer to as 100% nomad, which means I am everywhere all the time. And oftentimes it's to meet with clients around the country and in fact, around the world. So I have clients in Europe and a couple of different countries there as well. It's a full spectrum of full spectrum folks.
Now, do you take a different approach with clients who are neurodivergent than you do with others?
This is, to me, maybe the most important question for me and a decision that I had to make, and I did many years ago, which is a little counterintuitive, I think, to hear the answer. The answer is no, I don't. My process is the same. And the reason I say the process is the same is because it's something I've developed over the years. It's focusing on what's somebody's motivation, what are their goals, very active listening, pulling out of people what their ideas are and finding out where they want to go and then coming up with a plan of action. That doesn't change. And that applies to people writ large. But every single person I work with has something unique about their lives, whether they're neurodivergent or not. Now, the yes part of my answer to your question is the issues that a neurodivergent client is facing in their life is going to be a little different from someone who's the CEO of a public company or who's just graduating from high school and trying to decide what career to go into, who maybe is neurotypical. The specific issues may be different. And I have to recognize that and identify that and associate what I'm doing with that. But the process is unchanged.
Yeah, that's actually very good to hear because my personal opinion, for what it's worth, is that processes should be the same. There really shouldn't be any distinction as far as that's concerned. So give me a few reasons why clients and or their families would come to you and seek out your services.
It's funny, as you're asking that, and I probably shouldn't confess this publicly, I got a little emotional because what sometimes happens when you're working with any clients, but maybe even more so with neurodivergent, you're really building a relationship. You're always building a relationship. And part of my process is to, as quickly as possible, build trust with whoever I'm working with. And I would argue, again, particularly with neurodivergent clients, when that happens, you really create a bond. And then as I'm working with them, you feel that bond. And then sometimes you hear about that bond. Like I'll hear, let's say that's someone who's on the younger side, or maybe someone who has a deeper family involvement. A parent or a caregiver will reach out to me and say, so-and-so mentioned you in their blessings, or I'll get a note saying that they had sent to someone else who then sent to me, their life has changed. And I don't want to be self-aggrandizing ever. I just want to talk about outcomes. And I think the reason that happens is because we all face challenges. I can tell you where in my life I want to grow and where I want to develop. But I find that in the neurodivergent community, when you find an improvement, when you step forward, when somebody becomes, say, more financially independent or more confident or more able to do some things they couldn't do before, that step forward feels bigger. It feels more meaningful. And I find that really deeply meaningful. I'm a little selfish in that I get more from it as well in working with that community.
Okay. And again, I just want to backtrack for a moment. So let's say I'm a caregiver, family member, or your client, and I come to you
Yes.
and I say, help me. What might I be
Yes.
asking for help with?
Gila, that is proof that you are a really good interviewer because you noted that I gave a partial answer and got caught up in it and didn't actually answer your question. So now I'm going to answer your question. If clients come to me or will tell someone else, hey, you should go and talk to Steve, in a couple of scenarios that are a little bit similar. In the introduction, you used the word inflection point. I'm very specific about using that. An inflection point to me is there's a change coming. You may or may not know exactly what it is, but you feel there's a change. It might be a new job. It might be wanting to be able to be more social. It might be wanting to just operate better in your existing job or get that first job. And I'm talking a lot about career because a lot of folks come to me for that. But it can also just be their lives feel stagnant or in a rut or not growing as much. And they feel like they've maybe tried everything else. And I don't want to refer to myself as the last resort, but there's a little bit of, we've tried the traditional methods. Maybe we need to try somebody who has this long, deep background, who specializes a little bit, who is generally more effective with folks who are maybe in sort of higher cognitive functioning. I know none of us like to particularly use that term, but I think it's helpful in understanding where people are in their skill set, because I always want to match what I'm helping you with to what your capabilities are and then grow those. But because I specialize a great deal, it tends to be more with that population. And therefore, they see this as, how can we break through where we are? Because what we've been doing may or may not have been working, but it's not working enough. And I think that's the real heart of the answer to your question. They're looking to really move forward in those areas of career, executive functioning, life, independence, all these areas that I think when you get stuck, it's very frustrating for everybody.
Okay, so describe the process to me a little bit. Let's say I'm a client, I've come to you, I'm having issues with executive function that are affecting my ability to excel in the career that I would like to go into. What does it look like? What are the next steps once I've come to you and said, help me?
I always say, let's meet first. relax. Don't worry about things like money and invoicing and business, because it's business, but it's a very special kind of business. And so we meet, and I don't care how long, we can meet for half an hour, we meet for an hour. I've met people for a couple of hours. And right away, we're right away talking about something that has nothing to do with what we're supposed to talk about. Like maybe I know that they're an artist and they've drawn something interesting and I see an example, and we barely say hello before I'm saying, oh, I saw this thing that you drew, and where did that come from? We start to talk. And the reason I do that is not just, now I do that with any client, neurodiverse or neurotypical. And we start a conversation. By the time we start to talk about the actual topic, we already start to know each other a little bit. And then I get into the more formal process, but I think you've already picked up on that sort of incidental conversation. That is part of the process, build the trust. Then we start talking about, what's your motivation? I referenced this a minute ago. What's the motivation? Why do you want to make some change? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And then how might we get there? What are you good at? What do you want to be good at? And then we just weaved into a conversation. Keep in mind, this is the sort of, I'm going to use air quotes, which I hate to do, complimentary opening get to know you session. By the end of that, whether it's 20 minutes or an hour and a half or 2 hours, I say things like, well, this is just to help you decide whether you think I can be of use to you. This is your choice, whatever you think. And then I'll say to them at the end, I'll say, the conversation we just had, that's exactly how I work. You now know exactly how I work. We're going to have a conversation. It's going to be free flowing, but it's going to be structured. We're going to set out milestones. You're going to tell me what matters to you. I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to each have homework. If I give you homework, I'm taking homework as well. This is a collaboration. And at the end of that sort of get to know you session, they now know how almost every other session is going to work. So that's part one. And then part two, I'm going to make much shorter, which is the process is, let's identify the goals, paths toward the goals. Let's document it, and let's see how we're doing as we move forward against those milestones. Maybe it's for a limited time. Maybe it's a series of milestones and we re-up as we go. That's where it really becomes individualized.
Okay, now you touched on this earlier in the conversation, but I want to ask it again to see if there's any more elaboration you'd like to do in terms of what compels you to work with the neurodiverse community.
Yeah. So I think the sort of, apologies for the long answer from before, I could boil it down to is that everybody I work with, neurodiverse or not, comes to me because they're stuck and they feel the need to move through some inflection point. And the satisfaction I get, and again, I'm going to use the word selfish, I'm very selfish about it, is I feel good moving people through that. But in working with the neurodiverse community, I recognize that the advance they make, which might be not as large in somebody else's eyes, makes a bigger difference in their life. Getting that first job, getting that fifth job, but one where they're real. I'm working with someone now who he's been employed for years, never been happy. So we're going to find something that actually makes him happy and then gives them confidence. I have somebody else where all they want is they want a girlfriend. I know it sounds like an odd goal, but it's not odd. Oh, you want a relationship? And he wants to get a job so that he's able to present to someone who's able to have a full life and maybe offer who he is and what he can bring to a relationship. I know that when I work with someone and we are able to move forward, it means more to them than it does perhaps to people who are not neurodiverse. And if it means more to them, it's going to mean more to me. And that's the simple answer. It really boils down to that.
Now I'm going to ask the question that crosses everybody's mind when probably before, during, when they approach you for help. We mentioned self-determination before, and certainly that is a method of paying for your services. But if someone is not, let's say, in the self-determination program here in California or something similar in another state, how would they pay for your services? How do you handle that?
Yeah, for many people, it's a sensitive topic. It's not a sensitive topic for me. That's because no topic is sensitive for me. Everything should be on the table. So what I do is I have what I refer to as an SDP rate. By the way, do you want me to give numbers? Is that specifically helpful, or do you be a little vague about that?
That's completely up to you.
Oh, yeah, I like to be very transparent. So what I do is I have what I call either an SDP or in the other kind of directed programs in other states, I have a rate which, and this may surprise people who maybe aren't out in the business world, it's half of my corporate rate. So when I work with corporate clients where they are businesses, I have a rate. And then I have a rate that I give to any client where the budget is coming from the state or another source. So that's my first criteria. And I hold very strict to that because I don't want the sort of state entities, or even within a state, like in California, for there to be different payment structures, the regional centers, et cetera. I don't want them to see various rates. So I'll tell you that number is 350. So 350 an hour, which is half. Now I'll let everybody do the math and they can double 350 and know what I charge corporate. But for the SDP, it's 350. If it's someone who's paying out of pocket, and I think, and now this is a direct answer to your question, is I automatically do a 20% discount because I feel like if it's coming out of your pocket, while it's business for me, it's more than business for me. And I wanted to be able to accommodate. That's the structure that I use. And I like to think that the efficiency and the value makes up for it. But I also know some people, if it's out of their pocket, it can't be done. And we'll have a conversation. I'll try to find somebody else. We'll see if there's something we can do. But I know that's a factor and I'm very sensitive to that as an issue.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that and for providing that information. I'm sure there are people who are interested and would want to know. So
Yeah.
at this point, I want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't touched upon or covered that you'd like to add? And what do you feel is one of the most important takeaways, one or two takeaways from this conversation that you'd like our listeners to have?
Well, I appreciate it. I'm not intending to be complimentary, but I'm going to make the same compliment a second time, but I'm not doing it intentional. You asked such good questions that there's no area we didn't touch on that I would want to touch on. So I would say no. And I won't just repeat things I said before. I think the takeaway, if I had to really boil it down to one, let me start that in a different way, because I think there's a more effective way of putting it, which is if I were listening to this and I was either someone who was neurodiverse and was thinking that it might be a fit, or I was a family member, I think the takeaway is, hey, this all sounds great. I think it sounds great, but is it a right fit for me? And I think that's really the determining factor, because I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And what I mean by that is what I do is a little bit specialized. And there are other people who are, I know many of them, fantastic at what they do. That's in the arena of what I do. They specialize in something a little bit different. And I'm the first one to say, even if it's a client that I'm excited to work with, I might be overkill for what you need. And I'd rather point you at somebody where it'll be maybe more effective and honestly cost effective, because that's a factor, because somebody's going to provide a better fit for you. And that's the better way to go. So I think that's really, am I the right fit, is probably the best takeaway. And that's probably not the takeaway most people will give you when given the opportunity to summarize. But I think that's the most important thing. Gilda, one last thing that I should mention is that, like I said, I love working with a variety of people, but also I can be helpful in pointing you at someone else. If anyone after hearing this wants to reach out to me, please, anybody, anytime, I'm happy to talk to you about whether it might be a fit for you, or if I know someone else who is a good fit. Probably the best way is to take a look at my website. It has all my contact information, email address, phone number. You're welcome to call me. And I am going to spell the address because my last name is a little bit unusual spelling. So the website address is my full name, Steve Winshel. So it's STEVEWINSHEL.com. And just go there and feel free to reach out anytime. I'm very easy to reach. I don't sleep. I'm always available.
Thank you so much, Steve, for your time and for sharing your story with us today. It's been wonderful to have you on.
It's very kind of you to give me the opportunity to talk to folks, and looking forward to hearing the podcast. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to the community, and I really enjoyed it.
You're welcome back anytime. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other popular platforms. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like more information on this topic or anything else we've covered on the Autism Resource Podcast, visit us online at autismresourceproject.org/podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover in the future, contact us through the website or comment on any of our social media channels. And be sure to check out our growing website often, since we are continually adding useful information and resources. I want to thank our listeners for spending part of their day with us. This is the Autism Resource Podcast, and I'm Gilda Evans, reminding you to take care of yourself and that special person in your life.